welcome back to the SKOL Cast, where we are. I guess we did not clarify how we're going to do the intro now. Are we brothers who love to talk about football and happen to be Vikings fans, or we're Vikings fans who love to talk about football, happen to be brothers, or we are Vikings fans who are brothers and happen to enjoy talking about football?
I forget what side I was on last week.
But we are the SKOL Cast, where we talk about football, and if you've been keeping track, which I did a episode dump here this week, so if you're watching this, you should be able to see all our recent episodes. But clearly, we kind of the stretch run of the season here is going to be unabashed, full-fledged Vikings fandom, because
that's what we talk about.
It seems to be the unheralded story. Although, and I think we'll get into this a little bit, now all the haters want to be like, oh, Darnold is like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And you've got to pay him. And it is amusing to watch national analysts try to do the only person I have respect for is I always get the Twins mixed up, but I think it's Emmanuel
Acho, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's been highlighting Vikings all season, so I think he deserves. Yeah. But Orlovsky, Schefter, like all those guys. I'm sorry. Just a couple weeks ago, you were calling these guys frauds, so it's like, yeah. Anyways,
and do you remember the Saints, when people were saying the Saints were a better 2-0 team than the Vikings? Like, give me a break. Give me a break.
So that's kind of the jump start to our week. How are you feeling after week 14?
I feel really good. I know that, like, I think it was like after week 5, where it's like we had dominated what we thought were going to be some pretty good teams, and felt, we were coming up on the lines and stuff, and I was feeling good, and I was making a lot of hot takes. I feel less inclined to make hot takes, although I do feel the resurgent urge to, like, talk about the Super Bowl and stuff. But it feels, I don't know, it feels legitimate. Like, it feels, people keep talking about fluky, like Packers fans. There's even, like, the Locked On Packers guy is absolutely nuts, talking about this team being the luckiest team in the history of the NFL, as if the 2022 Vikings don't exist.
Why do people say that? Like, what, are they not watching these games?
No, they're not watching the games, for starters. I don't know if there is recently. I don't know if it's PFF or who has recently developed a metric for luck, which is just based on, like, calculating, like, the way that the ball, bounces, or, like, all these things. I don't know what all goes into it. So like, that's just me prefronting that, like, maybe they are talking about a metric that people measure. But if that's not what they're talking about, then I just think they're not watching the game.
But the PFF metric for luck has well, doesn't it have the Packers as one of the luckiest teams on the season?
I don't actually know.
I was looking. It's been a few weeks. It was,
yeah.
What are we at? Week 14. I think it was like week 8. I was looking at that. And the Vikings were. It just didn't make sense, because I'm pretty sure both Detroit and the Packers were ranked higher on the lucky chart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how you can get a metric for that, but there is a metric for luck.
Yeah.
I was noticing that.
Yeah, I just don't, like, I feel like anyone who has watched the Vikings, at least for the last 3 years, but maybe even especially if you've watched the Vikings, through the Zimmer era, watched like the change with a lot of the same players from 2021 to 2022, and then watch the change from 2022 into 2023 and 2024. Like there is a tremendous amount of purpose and like layers being built and um like yeah, like 2022 was in many ways lucky because it was just a whole bunch of one score games and there
And
were a
when
lot more fluky things that happened, but a lot of these games in 2024 are not fluky. Like they're they're either domination, like the earlier part of the season, or they're like gritting through our own mistakes and like and dominating like decent defenses.
yeah, when in 22 when they lost, they'd get blown out. Literally, all four
Yeah,
losses were multi-score losses.
yeah,
Whereas this year they have two losses. First of all, and we're in the middle of December already, and they've. I mean, the Rams technically is a two-score loss. The safety, as we all know, should not have been a safety, so it should have been a one-score loss.
right.
But um, that Lions game was very much a Vikings win to be had if Darnold could have completed the fourth down.
The Lions game was two really good teams who ran out of time.
Yeah, yeah. And I think at that stage of the Lions game, like the X factor all season long has been Darnold. How is Darnold going
Yeah,
to play? At that stage of the season, Jared Goff was clearly the better QB. Like he handled that
yeah,
final drive to perfection, whereas
yeah.
Darnold did not handle the Vikings' final drive to perfection. But like it's an entirely different. Obviously, I think the Lions' offense is still going strong, but I mean this Vikings offense has been dialed in
Yeah.
basically ever since. I would argue because their best the beginning of the season was really sexy to pardon my language here, but like they smoked Houston. They manhandled San Francisco, and nobody really knew what San Francisco and Houston were going to be like. They even manhandled the Packers. Yes, they let them come
Yeah.
back late, but like those were and the defense was putting up scores as well. So the scores are a little bloated, but when you look at the offensive metric, yards per game, even Darnold's completion percentage, his touchdown to interception ratio, his two of his best three games for the first 7 games of the season came against the Rams and the Lions. Like they were really well played games. We had Blake Cashman was injured. Hawkinson was still out. Addison back for the Lions game? I can't remember, but he had been
I think so. Yeah.
out there for a little bit. Um, and then obviously in the Rams game, Darisaw went out. But
Yeah.
and we didn't have Robinson. I think Robinson has been he's no
Yeah.
Darisaw, but he's definitely been a huge contribution.
For sure.
Um, if you eliminate that ugly, ugly Jacksonville game, the offense has been way more efficient in the second half. And so to me,
Yeah.
Sunday felt I'm kind of with you. Like a lot of people are doing hot takes now and stuff. I felt like Sunday was vindication. Like, yes,
Yeah.
I knew this was there. We were seeing this underlying metrics. Yes, the score was not sexy, if you're okay with me
Yeah.
using that terminology. But the metrics were there. Time of possession, amount of plays that they were running in each game. Like that was all better against Jacksonville than it
Right.
was against Houston. And
Yeah.
Houston was the really beautiful 34-7 win.
Yeah.
But Jacksonville, the offense actually played better, more dominating, and very well could have been a 40 burger against them. But obviously, Darnold has those 3 picks, and I think the ensuing week, I think we've talked about this some,
Yeah.
but that game, it sort of feels like before Jacksonville, it was like Darnold, like, really? Like, seriously? Can I actually do this? Well, then he has this big egg of a game, and
Yeah.
then O'Connell and McCowan and just the coaching staff as a whole re-coach him. Okay, like now
Yeah.
we got by the skin of our teeth. let's actually address some things. And Darnold has not turned the ball over since that game. And so
He technically had a fumble, but it was probably
it,
is recorded to him. But yeah,
it was a pitch to Jones, yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, he hasn't thrown any interceptions. And that fumble has been 3-4 games ago.
right, yeah,
From the so yeah, like if Darnold, I don't expect the Darnold that we saw against the Falcons. I don't expect him every week. But in terms of the escapability of the pocket, of a collapsing pocket, the accuracy of his throws, the protection while still hunting downfield, like he's been protecting the ball while still keeping his eyes downfield and making big throws. Like if that keeps up, I 100% think this team can go deep in the playoffs. But it's not so much about making hot takes about the playoffs as much as vindication for, yes, what we've been seeing all year long is true.
yeah.
I don't know why people, like, this just baffles me. Why are Packers fans and Lions fans so set on calling the Vikings frauds? We're not calling Packers frauds or Lions frauds. I mean, maybe there are some people. I don't know. I don't see that a whole lot.
I think
But
we toyed with the fraud word for the Lions a few weeks, like 4 or 5 weeks ago. But you're right. You're right. Frauds in the sense that we thought they were overrated, I think.
Yeah, no, and I'm not scared of that. Like I think the Vikings can beat both of them. But I don't think any of the teams are frauds in the sense of like they're not actually a 9-5 team or a 9 or what are they, 9-4, the Packers.
The Packers?
Yeah. Like they've won their games, they've played great. I would genuinely call probably all three of these the three best coached teams in the league. I mean, you have to respect the Chiefs. And McVay, who knows what's going to happen with the Rams? Like, the Rams that played against us, the Rams that played against the Bills, like that's a dangerous team for sure. But,
I think Lions fans, number one, probably just never run into them before because they've never been good, and so they've never had a reason to chirp, and so maybe this is just how they are. Maybe this is the but if something did genuinely flip, it feels like maybe they just don't know how to handle success. And they desperately want everyone to fear them, and it's like you've been good for 2 years, like chill.
People fear you. Like
we're not. There's not really a rivalry here until you've like broken our hearts, which might happen this year, but or until we've gone at each other. That's what a rivalry is. Right now, it's you're a scary team, like so act like it. Packers fans, I think, just don't know how to not be dominant. Like I just think
not be on top.
Yeah.
There's part of me that wonders if it kind of shows your insecurity, meaning that like as Vikings, everything is house money. They've won 11 games now, so they could lose out, and it would still be like, wow, this is better than I thought we'd get this year.
Yeah,
they're going to go to the playoffs. Whereas, with the Packers, they're so used to being on top, and then with the Lions, it really is Super Bowl or bust, and yet they've been decimated with injuries. They've had a number of close games. Like most of the games when they play competitive people are close. Now they've been winning them, so that's as long as they're winning, like they're the team to beat. But if there's this sense of like, man, can we actually go deep? Like if that's kind of sneaking in behind there, even Dan Campbell's gambles, like as long as he wins with them, it's like he's
Right.
brilliant. But that'll be the first thing that gets criticized if that costs him a game.
Sure. Excuse me.
Just like Kevin O'Connell's cuteness. Has Kevin O'Connell ever done, that's kind of a random question, but has he ever done a trick play that actually worked, like benefited?
It feels like there were some of those, like, what's it called? Like a reverse, is it called a reverse pass? Like where,
Oh yeah,
because
Jefferson threw one that
yeah,
was pretty good.
Jefferson
Yeah.
has a really good arm. Um, I'm pretty sure he threw one. I don't know if it was like to Kirk or to, was it even this year? Um,
I can't
yeah.
remember. I remember seeing the replay, and yeah, it was a good play, but I can't remember what year it was. Let me see if I can
I
look it up.
mean, that whole run with Josh Dobbs was just cute. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
just improvisation.
It was not this year. It was
Yeah.
back when they still had Cook.
Oh,
He threw to Dalvin Cook for a 23-yard gain against the Bears.
so 2 years ago.
I think he's tried at least 2 or 3 trick plays this year, and I think they've all been for negative yardage. Which has never cost them a game. I don't think he's ever tried it in a game that they were close with, but
yeah,
it's just like, yeah, stick to your just great passing schemes and
right.
use the run enough to keep people honest, and then
Yeah,
so Darnold throws for 347 yards against the Falcons, against the Cousins return game. 5 touchdown passes, 3 to Addison, 2 to Jefferson. Addison had 133 yards. Jefferson had 132 yards. So like that's a huge passing game. I think What? My AirPod is dying on me here. I think Hawkinson had 40 some yards on the day. And Jones had 70 some rushing yards, plus Akers did pretty good. A couple,
especially that one of those garbage time drives.
Yeah. The big story being that how in the world have the Vikings not had any contract extension conversations with Darnold this year?
It's very. Go ahead. Do you have more to say about that?
Well, several things. First of all, it's so silly. Nobody has contract extension talks in the middle of the season like this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that there's ever contract extension talk. The other thing is, I'm sorry, and even Mike Florio, who is a so-called Vikings fan, like, you don't get to be skeptical, call this team fraudulent or boring, which Florio has done. You don't get to be that and then turn around after one dominating performance and be like, oh, like all of a sudden think you have some inside scoop on what the Vikings should or should not do. Like, you have already exposed the fact that you have not paid attention to this team at all, because from the very beginning, this was never a JJ McCarthy show this year. From the very beginning, Darnold was going to be the starter, and they had a very specific plan of progression with JJ McCarthy. Perhaps he'd be starting by this time of the year. If everything was on track, yeah, it'd be interesting. Maybe they would have gone to him after the Jacksonville game.
Yeah.
But Darnold is not playing because JJ McCarthy goes down injured. Like, everybody wants to suddenly make the story about Sam Darnold and like, oh wow, you gotta pay Sam Darnold. But the story's not Sam Darnold. The story never has been, and it should not be Sam Darnold. The story is that this is the best coached team in the NFL. And they had an intentional plan, not only with their rookie QB, and yes, the injury was unexpected and set some aspects of that back.
Right.
But they had an intentional plan for Darnold. And it is proving, they are proving him, setting him up for success.
Yeah.
If they win the World Series, if they win the Super Bowl, we have a interesting conversation to be had. But anything short of that, I think, is just like, hey, we were going to give you your best opportunity to get a huge payday. Anyways, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. I want to know if this happens with other teams. Like, is this how people feel who follow, the Packers or the Rams or the Texans or whatever? Like, is there more? There's a number of angles. Is there more going on behind the scenes that local people who follow local, like Vikings concentrated people? Is there more going on with the Vikings than other teams? Is the national media just less aware of the Vikings, or is this normal nationwide? Because there's so many like really little things that just really irritate me about. Maybe I'm just very irritated in general, but
just to clarify before you go on, are you asking, like, do people who follow the Packers feel as annoyed by national media around the Packers, just like we do? Yeah,
just a lot of ignorance on and is that just normal? Like, is that why? And it makes me it makes it very unenjoyable even to listen to like a guy like Colin Cowherd or even the Rich Eisen show or whatever, where it's like, oh, what you're saying actually is kind of meaningless to me because you're clearly missing key information. Because, like, number one, it was never, ever in, like we've said ad nauseum, it was never, ever in the cards that JJ McCarthy was going to start somewhere. It was either ESPN or Fox. Like, it was either Colin Cowherd or some ESPN show where it was mentioned that the Vikings lost their starter. And I was just like, no,
Florio,
he was never the starter.
Florio says that. He said that. I was listening to him just this morning.
Like, number one, Sam was brought in before they drafted JJ McCarthy, and I don't know that Kevin O'Connell ever outright said, like, there was no way JJ McCarthy could become a starter, but he was very clear that JJ McCarthy had to hit, like, that they had benchmarks for JJ McCarthy, and he had to hit those before he could be a starter. The other thing someone said on, again, maybe an ESPN show or maybe one of the Sunday shows, where they said that JJ McCarthy had torn his ACL.
Yeah, like, that was Adam Schefter on the
Adam of all people. Like,
yeah, no, it's so. I completely agree with you. I have found myself just like, I think the coolest thing with ESPN is Orlovsky's like virtual, the way he'll do plays through. That's cool. Pretty cool. Sure. That's fun to see. And Orlovsky definitely has some knowledge of strategy and so forth. That is cool. But I've gotten so tired of listening to some of those shows. I'll turn them on and just be like, man, 2 sentences in, you prove yourself so ignorant that it's not even fun listening to you guys. So the beat reporters through training camp, like different ones of them. Obviously, Judd Zolgad with Score North, but there was another guy, I can't remember who it was, who also talked about this, who would go to training camp and see what was going on. Reported that, like, yeah, Sam Darnold's the starter. Period. This was before any preseason games, before McCarthy got injured. That he's taking first team reps and there's this well, yeah, like you said, McConnell would even in press conference talk about like specific stages, benchmarks that McCarthy needed to hit. And so I've often had the impression that, yeah, McCarthy could potentially hit them faster, but at the same time, it seemed pretty clear that this gig was Darnold's. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessary. Like I suppose if, because we saw 2 games of preseason, like McCarthy definitely looked better in the preseason games than Darnold that we saw. So I suppose if Darnold struggled like he did against Jacksonville, or even wasn't there another game before that where he had 2 picks? Jacksonville he had 3, but yeah, we just won't ever know what that was going to be like. But the idea that somehow Sam Darnold has just like risen to this element out of emergency's sake. To me, like, what kind of frustrates me about that is it misplaces the story. The story is not
Right.
Sam Darnold. Yes, Sam Darnold was wrong. Sam Darnold is skilled. I think Sam Darnold could lead the team deep into the playoffs, maybe even the Super Bowl. Like what we saw on Sunday is phenomenal. We've not seen that and there's like Dante Culpepper was the last quarterback to throw 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I remember Culpepper. That was my era of football. I would say Darnold's better than Culpepper. Like Culpepper threw a lot of incomplete. Like his completion percentage wasn't necessarily that great either, from my memory. But and Culpepper's balls just didn't look as. Darnold has a beautiful deep ball. Like that's just.
Mm-hmm.
It's smooth. It glides nicely, and it hits its target. Like that's pretty cool.
Sorry, you're gonna have to edit that out.
Why? Why? What did I say?
My dirty brain. Uh, he referred to somebody's balls, and I just couldn't not think about it.
His deep ball. What else do you call a
No,
deep
no,
pass?
you said Darnold's balls. No, you said Culpepper's balls, and then you said Darnold deep ball. Would have been fine, but preceding it with Culpepper's balls,
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
couldn't
That
stop
was a
thinking.
really.
I was gonna hope to get through the take, but I couldn't.
Yeah, we'll edit that out. Oh
I'm
dear.
so sorry. Okay, you gotta make my face not red.
Darnold throws a very beautiful deep ball.
Yeah,
He has a good. But the story is the coaching. The
yeah,
story is the way this team has set up with their strategy, with their scheming, with their just player empowerment and development. Like they're doing really, really well at that. And I guess that's what I wish people saw. Like even the adjustments from 2022 to now. I was listening to um the NFL pod. I'm not even sure what his name is, but he'll do the NFL on Fox. He'll do the
um,
the interviews with the play-by-play guys
yeah,
afterward.
yeah. I like him.
Yeah, I've liked him as well, but they were going through like coach of the year candidates. And I guess if you are taking into account previous years, and it's not just like a single year, like who has elevated their team the best, then I think Dan Campbell probably ought to get it. He's never gotten a coach of the year. But it does feel like a lot of people, the fact that you're taking a bottom team and making them one of the, I mean, in the NFC, the team to beat, that's pretty significant. But like people forget his first year they were 3-13.
Yeah,
Had a horrible offensive coordinator. He elevated Ben Johnson after that. And just some of those things, like Kevin O'Connell has done that too. Like they had the third worst defense in the league in 22.
yeah.
Dismissed Donatel, bring in Flores, and now they're a top 5 defense. Just different stuff like that. I just wish that was the story of what's being built in Minnesota more than that somehow like Darnold is just like stumbling into this system and
Yeah. Sorry, I got distracted looking up the name of the guy that hosts that podcast. Um,
who is it? What's his name?
I didn't find it.
Oh,
It's
you didn't find it yet.
NFL on Fox podcast.
Yeah.
Um, um, yeah, I concur. I agree. I lost my train of thought.
And so in light of that, like just to kind of follow the thought there, in light of that, like I'm not sitting here thinking you have to sign Darnold. I'm sitting here thinking, wow, what is O'Connell going to do with McCarthy?
Yeah.
Like that'll be really cool. Now, if Darnold were to go win the Super Bowl, then you'd be like, man, how do you let that guy walk out of the door? But I have every confidence that O'Connell's going to raise McCarthy as well.
I think there's a degree to which Vikings fans can get really divided about things, and so there's a part of me that's like, oh man, Vikings Twitter is gonna just become like a divided between keep Darnold or like between Darnold and McCarthy. Um, I think there's a part of me that's like, all right, Kevin O'Connell has earned my trust. His ability to communicate with Quessy has earned my trust.
And
So
Quessy, like the Score North or Purple Daily brought out like Quasy's role in all of this as well.
yeah,
He probably goes even more unnoticed. Yeah. Continue
yeah.
talking.
I mean, definitely feels like I don't know if it's like NFL Exec of the Year or like GM of the Year. I don't know what that award is, but he definitely should get it. Um, but um, oh, oh, they have earned my trust. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
like, regardless of what they do, yeah, I'll have some nerves about it. Of like, I don't think I'll have nerves. Well, yeah, I don't. If they win the Super Bowl, then I don't know. I for sure won't care because it's like I'll be riding on that high. And it's like we won with Sam, we can win again with Sam, or we can just move into the future with JJ McCarthy and look forward to like some fun football for the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like obviously I'll be nervous, but I mean I really hope Sam can find a good system to go to and that he'll be successful. I really don't think that there's a chance Sam stays short of like making it to the Super Bowl. I really doubt. Like they came in with a plan. They're going to execute that plan, and signing Darnold to the contract that he will likely be competitive for will just put us right back in the same situation that we were with Kirk
With
Cousins,
Cousins, yeah.
just salary cap wise. And
Now
whereas
is
JJ McCarthy feels it's he may have to go through a rookie year next year, but but like he'll be pretty ready to go. I mean, I would think he'd at least be comparable to like year two Stroud, year four Jordan Love, like um and
yeah.
and they're playing really good football and have like good futures, and so you know um I forget where I was going with that thought, but like even if it's not like right away, oh, Super Bowl in 2025, um, I think he's pretty much good out of the box, and then we'll have him on his rookie contract for the next 4 years. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't like I think Vikings fans need to I don't expect JJ McCarthy to have the team at 11-2 by week 14 next year. Like I think that's
yeah,
a
probably not.
ridiculous expectation. Even though before the season started, everybody was saying that the Vikings have the best ready-made system for all the rookie
Yeah,
QBs.
yeah.
Like that was
Orlovsky
that
was
was
saying
one.
that.
Sorry, what did you say?
Orlovsky was saying that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, there were. I remember seeing
There's a
multiple
note here.
people say
Yeah.
that. And so I think McCarthy could very well come out and have a fantastic season. I just think, like, yeah, we should temper our expectations. Like, don't expect McCarthy to have him 11-2 by week 14. Do they win 11 games in the season? I think that's quite likely, but I hope they lose. There's 6 games more spread out than the last 4 games of the season. And I just think
Yeah.
Darnold is definitely an upgrade to Cousins.
Yeah.
So if you're going to dump a bunch of money on a guy, like, I can see why you would maybe think Cousins. But it's so fun. Did you see that Rick Spielman interview floating around Twitter this morning? I think it was just this morning. Maybe it came yesterday. But he's like, "Oh, you got to pay Darnold and trade McCarthy." It's like, why is any serious Vikings fan caring at all like what Rick Spielman says? Because
Yeah.
this is the guy who threw a bunch of money, which his paying of Cousins was
Yeah.
probably a bit of a panic move. And so if he would have seen like what Darnold is doing, it's Spielman cannot see the potential of a QB, and that's something, to your
Yeah.
point, that's something I have come to trust about O'Connell. Is O'Connell can
Yeah.
see if a guy has potential or not.
Spielman built some really good teams, and part of the problem was he built a really good team. Yeah, I mean, he signed Thielen, drafted Diggs, had a bunch of defense, Hunter, a bunch of defensive guys, drafted Jefferson, drafted Darisaw. Like he did a pretty good job. The problem was that he couldn't figure out quarterback.
Yeah,
And in the 2017 team where we went to the NFC Championship and got demolished by the Eagles, who were just really good that year. Um, Cousins was supposed to come in and be the guy that like put us over the top. Like we had the NFC Championship team, like, and now we're bringing in this, you know, well-respected quarterback, at least respected by like the Shanahan, O'Connell, McVay types. Um, and we just like did worse, like consistently year over year, just like never even approached the NFC Championship. I mean, I guess made it to the divisional round one year and got destroyed by the Niners. But
yeah.
oh,
So
and then yeah, I think you're right. I think Spielman like kept kind of throwing money at Cousins, and then just from there the team just like got bloated, and that's why Kwesi had to come in and just chop a bunch of veterans off who were adored by the team, but you know, he was right. He
yeah,
nailed pretty much every single one of those he nailed. Um,
yeah. So that year, if Spielman would not have paid Cousins, so they paid Cousins and went on to draft Mike Hughes as a cornerback, which he was just with
he was
he's with the
he's
Falcons
the
now, isn't he?
Falcons, yeah.
Yeah. But still on the table was Lamar Jackson. Would you have if you could rewind things, would you have not paid Cousins, draft Lamar Jackson, and had potentially another 5 to 10 years of Zimmer?
No,
Or
there's nothing that could get you to knowing what I know now that could
yeah,
convince me to hit the rewind button. Like if I had the
yeah,
power to like hit the rewind button and go back, you couldn't. Like
the
O'Connell and Kwesi are
yeah,
so much better than the system we had before. And like I just love this team. Like Jefferson,
yeah,
um, the defensive guys that we have right now. I'm hoping Foe stays for as long as possible. O'Connell, Kwesi, Darnold or McCarthy, either one of those guys, as long as they get us to the playoffs every year, like
for
I
sure.
will be very happy watching this team. for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I know. It's weird to think about in that way, but like all the misery of the Cousins era. Thank you, Kirk,
Yeah.
for getting us to the place where the owners took very seriously. I mean, it's so crazy how, because we were not that far away from getting Ryan Poles as a GM, or
Yeah.
bringing in who was the other guy that they had brought in instead of
Well,
O'Connell?
they were very close to Harbaugh,
Yeah,
um,
but
but
did
also
they?
they had brought in something more. Kendall
Kellen
Kellen Moore.
Moore, the
Yeah,
with the Eagles.
at the time he was the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys when they were putting up those massive offensive years.
Yeah,
But
but is
he
he
was
with the
such a
Eagles now?
he went to the Chargers and is now with the Eagles. Yeah, he's just been floating around. Clearly, he's not getting a head coaching job for a reason.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but he just I remember when they posted on their Instagram that they had interviewed him, and I was just like, oh, please no, just because he seemed. Remember when he was with the Cowboys at the time, and the Cowboys is like, to me, living in the same hell that the mediocrity of the Cousins era was, where it was just like
yeah.
consistently hopeful, never good. And it's like I don't want offensive production without wins. It's just boring to me. Like that's just not interesting. Um, Ironically, I'm pretty sure I've done a little bit of research on this, but I haven't found anyone to verify. I'm pretty sure Kevin O'Connell was cut for Kellen Moore by the Jets.
Are you see?
Yeah,
Wait a second. O'Connell played for the Jets?
he spent like a training camp with them or something like that, and they cut him right before the season when they were making their final roster. They cut him in like the most unprofessional way. There's a video that's going around Twitter.
Oh, I thought that was with the Patriots. So
No, that was the Jet.
that
I
was
don't
the
know how.
Jets.
Yeah, I don't know how his Patriots time ended. He seems to have relatively good memories from that, but there was like he spent like a training camp with the Jets, and they brought him into the office, and before he even sat down, they had told him that they
Yeah,
decided to
I've
go
seen
with
that
Kellen
video.
Moore.
I always thought it was with the Patriots. Um, yeah, that's interesting. There's definitely, so this is a O'Connell, like one of the things that I love about O'Connell is there are, and there's actually in the NFL there are a lot of Christians who play the sport. Like almost more, obviously I don't know any of these guys personally. Um
Right.
as a fan and at a distance, it seems like there are more vocal Christians talking about Jesus as their Lord and
Okay.
Savior. Like not just talking about God and stuff. Like there are more vocal Christians in the NFL than in any other sport that I watch. I've seen
Yeah.
some here and there in baseball, NBA. I don't follow NBA a whole lot, but I mean, we have Anthony Edwards on the Timberwolves, who's fun to watch, but he's being fined by the NBA for his foul mouth. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the NBA that I know. Um, but it often feels like the vocal Christians are like Cousins kind of typifies it, or Tim Tebow like typifies, just these
Yeah.
great. They use their platform to testify, and I don't like in the grand scheme of as a witness for Jesus. Where does that stand? I don't know. Like I personally am somewhat turned off by it because it,
Yeah.
as a whole, it looks like Cousins cared more about money than about the
Right.
quality of his craft. Tim Tebow, a
Yeah.
very similar thing. It's like he ostracized a bit. It's really interesting he kind of followed a similar track as Colin Kaepernick, and people love to hate on Kaepernick, or especially white Christians love to hate on Kaepernick and love their Tim
Right.
Tebow. And I'm like, both talk about their faith shaping their messages that
Yeah.
were clearly above and beyond football. Like both of them had
Right.
messages beyond football. Um,
That's a priority. Yeah.
Kevin O'Connell personifies what I would long to be, like whether that's in the marketplace, whether that's if I was an athlete, like whatever, just like a rock solid leader who clearly empowers, like he raises the elevation of his team, like he
Yeah.
raises the quality of his team, like period, without bringing Jesus into the conversation or on the platform. Like he makes everything around him better. But then he's also fairly vocal and unabashed about his faith and his walk with Jesus and so forth, and that role. And yet he's not your typical Christian sports guy. Like he
Yeah.
drops F bombs in his
Yeah.
locker
Especially this year,
room.
more this year than ever.
Yeah. And not only that, he's incredibly competitive. Like
Yeah.
he's not I used to think like he was just a really good speaker, which I think he is. Like he's a fantastic public speaker, and so his locker room speeches are just incredibly inspiring. But this isn't just because he's a good speaker. Like he means everything from
Yeah.
his gut. Like they're gonna go deep, but then also that, like I think it is a deeply emotional thing to take
Yeah.
wrecked QBs that were mistreated by franchises, and just elevate them. And I think that began with Kirk Cousins. Like I think
Yeah. Oh,
we
for
saw
sure.
him elevate Cousins to a level. But even what's happening with Darnold, seeing that Jones wanted to come sit on the practice squad here when there were definitely like,
Yeah.
I think some of the, like he kind of, he gives the speech he needs to give for publicity's sake, but I think he clearly has somewhat of a chip on his shoulder in the sense of feeling like he was somewhat
Yeah.
wronged in his trajectory, and how, and that motivates his sense of mission or purpose. I don't know.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
No, I've thought about that a lot, and I've found it really fascinating. I mean, even just like his leadership style, like the way he like I think he's really people Jefferson and others have talked about occasionally glimpsing dark Kevin. Um
Flores,
and
wasn't there an article where Flores talked about that some?
maybe, yeah, yeah. And I just appreciate it because you don't see that. The public doesn't see that. Not that we should necessarily hide our when we're critiquing, like not that Kevin would necessarily hide the fact that he occasionally critiques his team or like lays into his team. But I think it's more the humiliation. Like he goes out of his way to build people up in public and then avoids humiliating them in
In
public.
public? Yeah.
And and like there was the closest we've ever gotten was one of the um I think it was the receivers show. I think it was the most recent receivers show where it followed Jefferson. Jefferson was one of the people, and they lost one of their games. They lost, and they went into the locker room, and the locker room was shut to the cameras, and you could just hear Kevin yelling in the background. And I'm sure he yells. I mean, when you watch he's speaking to like what, like 50 people plus all of the staff and the owners and everything. So like he kind of has to yell. But like the yelling isn't so much the point, is like, it seemed like he was really driving home the point of like, we have, that was the year we were fumbling all over the place. And anyways, like it's interesting to me that like there definitely is, he's not just this like Um, he's not like some people are super positive and upbuilding and everything, and you don't really believe it. Whereas he seems, it's not like he's lying to you. It's not like he's being, that moment when Darnold had the worst game of his year, and Kevin turns to him, doesn't give him a game ball, but turns to him and says, like, this whole team still has your back. And I don't know if you look at the rest of the team, I don't know if they did. Like in that moment, it didn't really seem like everyone was like,
Coach.
yeah. But I also don't think that O'Connell was just like blowing steam. Or that's not. Anyway,
He was
like,
embodying the
yeah,
response when our main QB has a bad game. This is how we're going to respond to him.
yeah,
Yeah,
and he's been different since that game. Um,
yeah,
and so like it wasn't like Kevin O'Connell was just like throwing flowers and can't ever, like, I felt that a little bit about Kirk sometimes. I was just like, I want Kirk to just get mad. Like I
yeah,
want to see him, and he does. But like even like his kind of gritting his teeth through that video where everyone was praising him. He that's totally understandable. I'm not saying that he should be mad in that moment, but like there is kind of this degree to it, just like, I just want you to stop holding it in. Just like stop
yeah.
being kind of the good Christian here and like get mad about it. I don't know if that's good. Maybe this is where like the negatives of football is misshaping me. But
Well,
but there's a part of me that feels like in those environments, like, yeah, no, I don't necessarily think you should yell at your coworkers, but there is a degree to which like your passion, I think sometimes being Christians in non-Christian settings means not having any passion or like not having any like
yeah.
drive or anything like that. And I'm not, I don't, yeah, I don't
Well,
agree
I
with that.
guess, yeah. Like, I guess what strikes me is, and I remember feeling this way as a high school athlete, and not always knowing what to do because I was a pretty competitive guy, but feeling like I needed my witness for Jesus was in through my image. And
Mm,
so how I talked, how I related with people, like, was through my image. As opposed to, I guess what O'Connell is doing is showing me how to be a witness for Jesus through the quality of product you're producing.
hmm
And so, like, it's not he doesn't strike me as kind of image conscious, whereas Cousins always had that. Tebow strikes me as that
yeah,
as well. Like, it's kind of this image, and I don't know. Like, I can't stand here and say they have not brought glory to God in that way. I'm just
right,
saying, like, the product they ended up producing sort of brought mockery on God in some ways. It brought mockery on themselves, and as a
right.
fellow Christian, I kind of cringe a little bit. It's like
Don't want to be associated with that.
go out and produce, and then maybe you have a little bit more
Yeah,
of a voice to whatever. Um, and especially people, because there's a lot of Christian athletes who aren't super vocal, and you just don't realize
yeah,
that they are until you get some off-brand podcast where they're opening up more about it or something, that, and then it's
right.
like, oh, I didn't even know, but here you're like producing a lot of really good results and stuff, and so, yeah, I think for me, like, O'Connell is just very good at what he does, at leadership, at empowering, raising up players, player development, and then and in that way, like, there's an attractiveness to what O'Connell has, because O'Connell is not Mike McDaniels. Like, he's not
Right,
a buddy coach that's just like
right.
hip and friendly. And I don't know. I don't follow Mike McDaniels that much, so maybe he's a believer as well. I don't I don't want to throw shade, but I'm just saying, like, there's this different there's an attraction to O'Connell because there's a sense of authenticity and genuineness, and like he really does have your back, even when he's laying into you about the fumbles or about your like what you need to do better. And that's like, to me, that personifies a little bit more like what we as Christians are supposed to be than just like a bunch of glazed image niceness kind of thing that doesn't actually produce a result that is beneficial to anybody.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's kind of a rant. You got to go here soon.
Yeah.
Do we have time to go through our picks?
Yeah, let's do it fast.
Let's do it quickly.
Yeah,
we do not do well to look back at week 14. We don't do well at differentiating from each other. So we both went 8-5, which means I stay just as far ahead of you as I've been.
You need to take some more risks. It's not like there's not upsets.
I actually wonder if I need to go through, because this doesn't make sense. Something's wrong here in my math. You're 7 games behind me in the loss column. Why are you 17 games? I either bump myself. I'm going to have to go through. I've been cheating. Either you should be at 121 or I should be at 118. I'm not sure.
Maybe there was a week that or not a week, I guess.
I'll have to go through and see where the discrepancy is there, because I'm pretty sure you're only 7 games behind me. So what are the big stories? We both picked the Packers. It was a close fought game. How did you feel about that Lions-Packers game? Just real quick, like, do you?
Yeah, it's kind of a win-win scenario. Either we got closer to the Lions or we got further away from the Packers. I don't know. I think the Lions are gettable. I think that's the big thing I can away with.
Do you feel like officiating
both the Lions and the Packers
screwed anybody in that game?
What I didn't get a chance to look at like how it went down with the officiating. I don't remember. Was there a big controversy?
I guess I don't know if it was so much officiating. There were some hits. I feel kind of torn. Like, I watched some defensive players respond, and it's like, what are defensive players supposed to do? I feel like Detroit's defense definitely borders on some dirty hits sometimes. Yeah. And I feel like some other teams, they would have gotten called differently, but that's probably just me being biased against the Lions. And I don't know what to do. Like, speaking of Dante Culpepper, like back in the early 2000s, like there were all kinds of ugly hits on people.
Culpepper blew up his knee.
Yeah. Yeah, the only other game to really highlight maybe is that Bills Rams game.
Yeah.
It felt vindicating to me in the sense that I really think the Rams, when they're all clicking, that Rams offense is a top 3 offense.
Yeah.
But maybe neither the Bills or the Rams have any decent defense. I don't know.
Yeah.
So speaking of the Rams, we both picked the Rams to beat the 49ers this week.
Historically, the Niners win this game, but
yeah. And it would be quite a phenomenon if the Niners win and then the Seahawks lose. Who are the Seahawks playing? They're playing the Packers. Yeah, if the Niners win and Seahawks lose, like that division is just so crowded, so up in the air yet.
Yeah.
We both see the Dolphins coming on strong here. Texans not very strong, I think. Talk about somebody proving their worth. I mean, I don't know that they'll win a Super Bowl with them, but That Dolphins team is entirely different with Tua on the field than
Yeah.
without him. We are we're going with the Panthers to get a win over the Cowboys. Did you want to say anything on that, or you just
Um, Panthers are playing really well right now, and I think Bryce Young is showing people, I mean, maybe not showing people, but I just think he's rebounding really well to being benched, and
yeah.
maybe it's good for him. Adam Thielen's on that team, so I always kind of root for them.
Yeah. I think that could be a really cool story by the end of the season if he's able to end the final 4 games strong. Bryce Young is definitely
Yeah,
just a rebound mid-season with the same team. High draft pick, starts out rough. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Um, we have probably we'll just jump down. We have the Bills getting the Lions this week. My my thought is the Lions have certainly not been dominant against competitive teams, and their defense is really decimated.
yeah,
If they don't win this, if the Lions win this game, if they don't lose to the Bills, then I definitely think the Lions will probably have the 1 seed in the NFC. But I think there's a very real
yeah,
chance that the Bills get them this week. And it may not even be like terribly close. I don't know. It'll
yeah.
be interesting.
I was thinking about that. I mean, it's a hard fought game against the Rams, so maybe they'll be like winded, but also maybe they'll be motivated.
Yeah.
Um, and I think if they're motivated, that plays very, very well because I don't know that the Lions are super motivated right now. And like you said, their defense especially is just decimated with injuries.
I see this stretch run as like for the Lions, it's either going to turn them into a Super Bowl team or it's going to unravel them for the season. And they'll be
Yeah,
I mean maybe I'm just being sensational, but this is kind of the culmination of the toughest stretch of their season right here
yeah,
against the Bills. We also both picked the Steelers to beat the Eagles, and I think the Steelers have a very comparable competitive offense. I was a little critical of AJ Brown, being critical of his QB, which I think is just bad. Like
yeah,
all season long, I've been skeptical of their locker room presence. I don't think they have very good coaching. I think
yeah,
they whatever, but they've had a good stretch run here. But I've also been watching some all 22 video of the Eagles, and Hurts. I think it's legit to say Hurts has a passing issue,
yeah,
and unless something like Steelers defense is stiff, um,
yeah,
there is some heart here in the sense that man, it'd be beautiful to see the Lions and the Eagles lose this week and the Vikings win, but I do think the Steelers could get the Eagles.
yeah.
You have the Seahawks winning. I have the Packers winning. Either one
It's a
would
win-win.
be a win-win.
Yeah.
We have the Vikings beating the Bears, and then the
Bears
Falcons.
winning.
You think the Falcons will?
Yeah, I think the Falcons will rebound. It's what Kirk Cousins does, and it's a terrible Raiders team who just lost their quarterback. So
Yeah, yeah. I think if O'Connell is still playing, there's a good chance the Raiders could get them potentially. But
yeah,
yeah, it'll be interesting. I think there was a time when I thought, well, just last week, I thought that with the Bears coaching change, maybe that would spark something, but they seem to just be
just given.
unraveling
Yeah,
morale wise and everything. So I don't expect the game to be as close as the one at Soldier Field was, but it'll be interesting to see how it turns out.
yeah.
Okay, that wraps up our SKOL Cast and our Vikings fandom for week 14 in review. And if you've been watching and you have any hot takes you want to drop or responses you want to give, think maybe you just think we're
Crazy.
all frauds. Just go ahead and leave that in the comments.
This show is a fraud.
No, we're very real. We are diehard Vikings fans.
It's true. Yeah.
Okay, we will see you all next week.
Yep.